Hey there, HorseCenter fans. Matt and I are back with another exciting edition of the show. Matt, we are leading this show with the Met Mile at Belmont Park.
It is a terrific holiday card at Belmont Park, full of graded stakes races, a couple of grade ones, and we got a Kentucky Derby prep out on the West Coast.
July 4 holiday is a race day, Matt. Met Mile, as you say, is awesome. Los Alamitos Derby leading to the Kentucky Derby, plus a little talk about the Suburban, and we'll look back at Midnight the Sioux and Tom St. Todd, of course. Watch it all right now here on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the super pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I am really good, Brian. I am looking forward to some fireworks in the Met Mile at Belmont Park on Saturday.
It's a holiday for us, Matt. July 4th, it's a holiday in racing because this Met Mile is sensational. Let's jump right into it. Skip the formalities. We'll start from the rail, Matt. Network Effect. Chad Brown chained horse. He's never beaten this kind before, but I know a lot of people are talking about him as an up-and-comer still.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, he ran a really nice race last time to go to get second in the Carter Grade 1 to Vekoma, but I agree with you, Brian. He's not faced a field of this caliber before.
Yeah, and let's not forget that really nice second in the Carter was 7 1/4 lengths back of the winner. Also, I can't completely forget about when he tried big horses late last year. I guess it's been more than 6 months now, but it was late last year in the Cigar Mile, and he really did nothing. Proving for Chad Brown. People have liked him for a while, but I just can't see him running a big race in here in this particular Met Mile. Let's go to the number 2, Matt. I think we have 3 potential favorites in this year's Met Mile, which makes it kind of exciting. I'm not sure who's going to be favorite. One of the horses they'll be betting, though, is Vekoma. Matt, his Carter. We just talked about Network Effect being second in there, but 7 1/4 lengths behind the winner, and that, of course, was Vekoma. Huge performance.
Huge performance. Huge speed figure out of the race. 2 very, very strong performances this year in one-turn sprints. I don't know, Brian. I feel like I can say the same thing about Vekoma that we said about Network Effect. Not quite to the same extent, though. I don't think Vekoma has ever faced a field of this caliber loaded with talented older horses. Now, he may be up for the task, but in my eyes, he's going to have to make another step up to contend with the likes of Code of Honor and McKinsey.
Okay. I see it slightly differently. I think Vekoma has run in some good races before, and certainly, he was still pretty lightly raced when he won the Bluegrass last year at Keeneland impressively, and then the Kentucky Derby, probably not a distance he wants, off track, all that. Vekoma did not run up to his complete ability, but let's draw a line through that 10 furlong Kentucky Derby, and let's talk about the new improved Vekoma, Matt. Plenty of time off after the Kentucky Derby, and his 2 7 furlong races this year were sensational. The Sir Shackleton was excellent in his return race, and then the Carter was better than that. He caught a sloppy track. Did that help him a little bit? Maybe with the final margin, but regardless of how you look at the Carter, it was a big performance. We know he likes a dry track. We know he can run at Belmont. And the one-turn mile, Matt, I think is a distance that suits him. I would mention, though, that he is 0 for 2 against Code of Honor. One, of course, came in the Kentucky Derby, but Code of Honor beat him also in the Fountain of Youth last year. Now, that's been a long time coming. Maybe the Son of Candy ride has gotten this good. I'm not going to turn anybody off Vekoma. I think he sits third early, and he's got a shot in here, but like you, I guess I am leaning towards he still has something to prove to me.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that, Brian.
All right, that's Vekoma. He could be anywhere from the favorite to the third choice. I think he has to be bet, though, off how good that Carter was last time. As does the 3. The 3 is McKinsey. And McKinsey's the most accomplished horse in the race, probably. You could split hairs there with Code of Honor, but McKinsey's been around for a while. He's won nearly $3.5 million. He's won half of his lifetime starts, and most of the other starts, he was second. Now, last year in the Met Mile, he ran a really good race. He had some trouble, and he was a fast-closing second. This Met Mile might be even tougher. There's no Montoli this year, but it might be even tougher, Matt. I want to know, do you think, because I'm wondering if McKinsey has been as good at 5 as he was last year at 4.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, this Met Mile is going to be a race that will help us answer that question. I think it's fair enough to draw a line through that trip out to the Saudi Cup where McKinsey really did no running at all out there. He's not the kind of horse that would take kindly to a trip overseas, as we saw on there. And McKinsey supporters, I think, can be a little bit more confident in that he came back and won really easily at Santa Anita in Grade 2, and ships east to Belmont Park for Bob Baffert, which Baffert has done so many times. Fans of the show know that in the past I haven't been a big fan and rarely pick McKinsey to win, but you know, I think he's really well suited to this spot. And with his experience, I really believe that the 1-turn mile may be his best distance. And for once, you might actually get decent odds for McKinsey in a big race.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say he won't be the favorite. He always could be on Saturday. Like I said, there's 3 horses I think that they are going to get that, and it's hard to separate which one will be the favorite and which one will be the third choice. McKinsey's in there. I agree with a lot of what you said. I have to respect McKinsey for what he's accomplished in races like the Met Mile and the Whitney last year. He's come east, and he's done very well in the past. I just look at his 2 races this year, and I do have some concerns. Obviously, the Saudi Cup was a real bummer of a race. Okay, Saudi went over to Saudi Arabia. The distance he just didn't run. But even in the race coming back, that field just doesn't compare to this field at all. He won pretty easily, won by less than 2 lengths, but he did it pretty well in hand. I wasn't overwhelmed by any means in that race. Certainly the horses in the Carter that Vekoma beat were better than the horses that McKinsey beat out there in the Triple Bend. So I'm not ready to say McKinsey is quite as good as he was last year. And as one of the 3 favorites, that's enough for me to want to try to beat him. Respect, but he's not going to be my top pick. Let's move to the 4, Matt, because after talking about 2 of the favorites, we're now going to talk about the longest price on the board. His name is Hog Creek Hustle, Matt. And let's start the conversation by saying this Longshot, longest shot on the board, I'm pretty sure he will be the highest odds in the race, is a Grade 1 winner at 1 turn at Belmont Park.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the winner of the Woody Stevens back a year ago. Actually, that was the last time that he found his way to the winner's circle. Hog Creek Hustle is a popular horse amongst racing fans, but he's going to have to improve and run a race that he hasn't come close to. Yeah,
maybe not come close to, or maybe come close to, because if you're thinking Hog Creek Hustle is 20 to 1 or more and is a horse that could rally into a fast pace at a mile when horses are tiring as a long shot to throw in exotics, maybe he needs to run pretty similar races to a few that he's already run, such as the Woody Stevens at Belmont Park last year. Listen, I really don't expect him to win, but on the other hand, I do see a pretty fast pace in this race, and he is a threat, I think, to rally up for 4th or maybe even rally up for 3rd. So just consider that when you're placing your exotic bets in this race. Hog Creek Hustle should be passing tired horses in the Met Mile. Whether that's for 6th or 4th or 3rd remains to be seen. But at the odds, you might want to throw him in that bottom there. Number 5, Matt, is the last of the 3 big red-hot favorites. And, of course, I'm talking about Code of Honor. Code of Honor, Matt, was a strong winner. Let's say a strong winner. Maybe not super impressive, but a strong winner of the Westchester last time. I think he had every reason to lose that race in that it was his first race in a long time. The track was a little bit off. Endorsed kind of shot through on the rail, and Endorsed, of course, had been racing all year. And Code of Honor still won it. Having said that, he'll need to do better to expect to win the Met Mile on Saturday. But I don't know why he wouldn't improve off that one good return race. We know he likes Belmont. And I think Matty's one of those rare horses that's every bit as good at 8 furlongs as he is at 1.25 miles.
Yeah, and going through the card so far, we've been talking about past races from these horses, and Code of Honor's got plenty of back class. Code of Honor's already proven as a winner of Grade 1 races more than once. He beat older horses last year in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, so he's already proven to be able to take on top level competition. Even though the Westchester wasn't that kind of race in his comeback, he's got the back class from last year that, to me, says he can handle the quality field in the Met Mile. It looks like Code of Honor is probably going to get the last run on the other two major contenders that we mentioned in Vekoma and McKinsey. I see him being a little farther back than them, and to me, that's an advantage.
Yeah, I kind of like the race setup too for Code of Honor. These horses, and the argument is these horses are so fast, and this is one turn. It's going to be a 1:33 mile at Belmont Park. Is Code of Honor fast enough to pick up the pieces in that kind of race? And I think the answer is yes. We saw a little bit of that last year in the Dwyer when he returned from the Kentucky Derby. I kind of, somebody suggested that the 1.16 cutback is probably not the best way to go into the Met Mile against these fast horses. But to me, as long as he gets a fast pace, I think it is. I think it's a race that really puts some bottom into him. He should be sharp. I know he likes Belmont Park. And there's just too much for me to like in here to ignore. You started to talk about the race, the way the race will be run. I think Vekoma sits third early. I think McKinsey is not far behind him. And I think Code of Honor is closer to the back of the pack. Fast fractions will help Code of Honor. If for whatever reason it's not as fast early as we expect, that would set the race up better for Vekoma and maybe even a little bit McKinsey. All right, Matt, number 6 is the horse that Code of Honor beat last time, and that's Endorsed. Endorsed is a nice horse who ran a very good race in the Westchester. But everything I said about Code of Honor having things against him a little bit in the Westchester goes the opposite for Endorsed. He had been running. He obviously liked the track that day, and he made the rail opened up, and he made a nice move. I think he ran his career best lifetime race. Maybe he can build upon that, but I just don't see him running nearly as close to Code of Honor at the finish line as he did in the Westchester. For that reason, I can't really endorse Endorsed in the Met Mile.
Yes, and in our analysis so far, we've been talking about a likely fast pace in the race, and that fast pace is probably going to come from these three horses on the outside that we're mentioning now. And Endorsed had the lead in the Westchester and got run down, of course, as we said, by Code of Honor.
Yeah, and I would think he'd be a little farther back than that, Matt. He did make an early move in that Westchester, but I don't think he has the speed of Vekoma, for instance. So I would expect him to be more middle of the pack with McKinsey, but just not quite as good. Number 7 is Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze will be a horse that I think will be out there to some extent. Now, last time in the Oaklawn Park handicap, I thought he was a little farther back than he probably wanted to be or than he usually is, and it might have cost him a little bit, or maybe not. Maybe he was just third best behind By My Standards and Warrior's Charge that day. I think what happens here off that race is Mr. Freeze is a horse who can, with a high turn of speed and who likes a mile. I think Mr. Freeze does not fall as far behind Warrior's Charge early, and that prompts this pace we're talking about a little bit.
Yeah, I think the only shot that Mr. Freeze has is to get out there and push the pace or be the pace setter out there. As you mentioned, he likes the mile. He won the Gulfstream Park Mile, which was a Grade 2 back in February, and in the Oaklawn Park Handicap, he just he ran into By My Standards, who is one of the top older males dirt horses.
Yeah, and this is only tougher. This is only tougher.
Yep.
By my standards, Warrior Charge are good, but this race is probably deeper than that race. That was a very good race. Mr. Freeze, like I said, I think he pushes the pace a little bit more after what happened to him last time. A really nice horse to be, the fifth choice or so, but I don't know. I don't like his chances to outrun Warrior's Charge early, and I don't like his chances to hold off the likes of Vekoma, McKinsey, and Code of Honor late. So I think it's a tough spot, but an awfully nice horse to have pretty good odds on in the Met Mile if you like him. Now, last horse, Matt, is the horse I think is the speediest of all, Warrior's Charge. He interests me a little bit more than Mr. Freeze. Perhaps easy for me to say because he beat him last time in the Oakland Park Handicap. But I'm looking at a horse here who I think is still going to have odds. He was 7-1 that day, and I don't think he'll be any lower than 7-1 here in the Met Mile. But he looks like a horse to me who could be ready to move forward. He's still pretty lightly raced. He was very lightly raced when he ran a very game race in the Preakness. He, too, had a pretty long layoff after that. Came back good. He won an allowance race nicely. Then a little bit later, he had 2 races at Oakland Park, a super game win in the Razorback, and then a awfully game performance to be second in the Oakland Park Handicap. Off of those 2 races, which probably are pretty similar in speed figures and overall performance, he could be ready as an older horse with only a few races removed from that layoff. He could be ready to make a move forward. I'm not sure how he's going to do it. Does Mr. Freeze kind of say, is he content to be second and Vekoma's third early and Warrior's Charge has the lead? Or is he just pressured too much? If he's not pressured much, I think he's a very dangerous horse in here.
Yeah, I think that Warrior's Charge is going to win some races this year. He's going to find some races for sure that aren't quite stacked as strongly as the Met Mile is. He comes from the barn of Brad Cox, who quite frankly is winning races in handfuls all over the country. So there isn't any reason to think that Warrior's Charge isn't going to run a good race.
Okay, Warrior's Charge is my best long shot, and I got him here at about 8-1. I expect pretty good odds on Warrior's Charge. I expect pretty good odds on everybody after the top 3. But of all the horses that are not in the top 3, Warrior's Charge is the horse I like the best, dependent a little bit on how much he's pushed early. But he looks like a game horse, and like I said, I think he could be moving forward. So having said that, Matt, I got to use Code of Honor as my top pick, and I got to use Warrior's Charge a little bit underneath, and maybe a saver on Warrior's Charge going gate to wire. But Code of Honor is definitely the one I like best. Respect for Vekoma, respect for McKinsey. Maybe throw in Hog Creek Hustle and a horse like Mr. Freeze at the bottom of those exotics. But I wouldn't mind at all to see a Code of Honor Warrior's Charge exacta in here.
Yeah, I feel basically the same way. I'm going to put Code of Honor on top, and I think there is a chance that either McKinsey or Vekoma don't finish in the top 3. I don't really feel like they're going to come in Code of Honor, McKinsey, Vekoma, or Code of Honor, Vekoma, McKinsey. So I think there's room for one of those other horses at a better price than the top 3 to slip in somewhere. Okay.
So we're on similar wavelength here in the Met Mile. And yeah, it's not science here, folks, but usually when you have 3 horses that are vying for favoritism, not all 3 of them run their very best, and they don't usually finish 1, 2, 3. That worked out very well last week in the Stephen Foster, where we got a long shot in for third. So could happen again here in the Met Mile. In any regard, Matt, it's just a terrific race, and if you told me it's the best race so far in 2020, I might say that once in a while here and there, but I wouldn't argue with you if you said that about the Met Mile. Let's jump on the Kentucky Derby Trail now, though, and let's move west. Let's go all the way out to Los Alamitos out there in Southern California. Got a short field. There was a couple of horses I was wondering if they were going to enter, and they really didn't. So we have 5 horses. One is a big long shot making his dirt debut. The other 4 are all interesting horses, but I think the conversation has to start with the son of Uncle Mo from the Bob Baffert barn. His name is Uncle Chuck.
Yeah, even though Bob Baffert has lost a couple of his top guns in the 3-year-old division, he just seems to keep finding them, and they come out of his barn. And Uncle Chuck is the latest one. He basically, on the front end, was a 7-length winner of his maiden special weight at Santa Anita, and that landed him a spot in the 5th Kentucky Derby future wager pool that just ended last weekend. And I guess, surprisingly or not surprisingly, he was heavily bet by the Bob Baffert fans. He was, I think, ended up being the 4th choice in the individual entries at 13-1. So Baffert, 3-year-old, already creating a buzz, and he looks tough in this 5-horse field.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to see is carryover of what we saw in the Kentucky Derby future wager. I think Uncle Chuck is going to get pounded at the windows here in the Los Al Derby, Matt, the 9-furlong Los Al Derby. This race will not get you into the Kentucky Derby, but this race, just a few points can help. And for Uncle Chuck, it's kind of the race between the race to see if he's really a threat for the Kentucky Derby. If he runs big here, then he goes in a bigger prep next, and he could be as low as the 4th choice or even lower in the Kentucky Derby. It's a tough race to try to break down here, because I could see Uncle Chuck 3-5, 4-5. The maiden race was terrific. He broke a beat slow, and then he rushed up on the rail. He took over the race, ran fast, did it impressively, looked good. Step up in class here, but his 2nd and 3rd choices in the Los Al Derby, his chief rivals, have both been disappointments, for lack of a better way of describing their seasons. 1,000 Words, also a Bob Baffert runner, and a No Dior have been disappointments. You'll remember a No Dior was my kind of dark horse at the beginning of the year to win the Kentucky Derby. That has not worked out at all. But I guess in this field he has a shot. No Dior ran a better race last time, Matt, in the Santa Anita Derby when he was part of that contested pace, and he hung around pretty well. This is probably an easier spot than that. No Authentic and certainly no Honor AP, but hard to get too excited about him. 1,000 Words, I guess we could draw a line through that last race where it was sloppy at Oaklawn Park.
Yeah, and of course, 1,000 Words, we remember, was the winner of his first 3 races and was right up there at the top of Bob Baffert's Derby hopefuls at that particular time. But things just not have gone his way this year. His last race in particular, he kind of stumbled a little bit, and as you said, didn't like the track, so we can ignore that. I think Baffert is hoping that he's going to snap out of it and show a little bit more of what we saw last year.
Yeah, and maybe the pace sets up well for him, because I think a No Dior does have the ability to go with Uncle Chuck early, take the race to Uncle Chuck, and maybe that sets it up a little bit for 1,000 Words. He has been working very well, 1,000 Words, since that draw aligned to a race at Oaklawn. Of course, before that, he was pretty well beaten by those 2, again, Authentic and Honor AP there. But that's, I think those 2 were better than anything we have in the Los Al Derby. It's almost a race where we sit and kind of watch and see how good is Uncle Chuck. If I was going to put a few dollars, maybe I would try the other Baffert to sit there to 4th early and make a move. Certainly, I can't get excited about playing Uncle Chuck as odds on. One other horse I do want to mention, Great Power, might be a nice horse. He's only had 2 races. He's a very well-bred son of Blame, who had a nice maiden win. His only start at 2. And then he ran into Charlton and Rushy. I guess Rushy and him ran into Charlton a while ago. And Charlton, of course, won that easy. Rushy's come back from that distant second and done really well. So be interesting to see if Great Power can move forward off of that what was only his 2nd race of his life.
Yeah, I agree. And who knows? He could turn out to be second best in this race, considering both an Eldor and 1,000 Words need to improve.
That's right. All right. That's the Kentucky Derby prep for the week. Los Al Derby. We've got more Kentucky Derby preps coming next week. In fact, between shows, they'll have the Indiana Derby, which I believe is going to be a Wednesday at Indiana Grand next week. So we'll be looking at that. But then we really get into one of the bigger Derby preps, the Bluegrass, for next week. Now, one other race from that really nice holiday card at Belmont I want to mention is the Suburban, because it occurs to me that this is a rematch of last year's Belmont Stakes, Sir Winston and Tacitus.
Yeah, and not only Sir Winston and Tacitus, but also the third place finisher, Joe Evia. So it's the top three from the Belmont Stakes coming back in the Suburban, Grade 2, going 10 furlongs. And it's an interesting little race because at this point in their careers, it's a little hard to know what to expect from the top two in Tacitus and Sir Winston. They only have one win between them in their last combined 7 starts since the Belmont Stakes.
Yeah. Sir Winston, it really looks like a horse who wants to come from way back. But his 2 dirt races recently were not bad. The sloppy flat out, and that's the horse I think we also need to mention here too. Moretti won that race. I think Moretti will get played quite a bit in here, almost to the point of favoritism. Moretti coming off that flat out win, but that was slop. That was 11 furlongs. This is a more classic distance. 11 furlongs almost starts to get into that marathon range. So Moretti beat Sir Winston easy last time. Slop, not a lot of pressure. I'm going to try to beat Moretti in here. I'm stubborn, not as a pig in the slop, because I still think Tacitus can win races like this. I don't think he'll be a heavy favorite, if favored at all, in here. So I like Tacitus best. He gets the blinkers on. I just think he's a little bit better than this. Joe Evie is interesting, but you also got Mr. Buff in there, that really, really nice New York bred who's got a ton of speed as well. So maybe Joe Evie and Mr. Buff cancel each other out just a little bit on the lead. Sets it up for the top 2 from the Belmont, and I'm going to go Tacitus to turn the tables on Sir Winston as my Suburban pick. How about you?
Well, I agree. I think that Tacitus certainly has the back class in here. He really hasn't had any significant time off since the Belmont Stakes, and I'm not saying that as a negative at all. But he's been going Grade 1, Grade 2, pretty consistently all the way. Honestly, he should win this race, but I can't really be confident in Tacitus, the Naira Morning Line odds maker, who is usually pretty good about the morning line, has Tacitus at 9-5, and I certainly don't want any part of Tacitus at a price like that. I do like Moretti in here. I guess I think he's not going to be bet quite as low as you might, Brian, but I think Moretti is a horse that's going in the right direction, a horse that trainer Todd Pletcher finally has doing his best running, and just for that makes me like him over the big duo of question marks in Tacitus and Sir Winston.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't blame you for that. Although I will argue the morning line. I think Moretti will be quite a bit lower than. I think I saw him at 9-2 on the morning line. I can't imagine he's that high in here. I just think Tacitus is getting, for sure, the easiest race he's been in a long, long time. Probably since he won the Wood Memorial, Tampa Bay Derby Wood Memorial back last year. So I'm sticking with Tacitus in here. And yeah, I guess he's the favorite, but I think they'll bet a few horses. So anyway. Now, let's talk a little bit about what happened last week, because I think we have 2 favorites for the Breeders' Cup now. And there's a lot of races to be run. There's really good 3-year-olds, and 'Tis the Law and Honor AP, and who knows who else. And there's other good older horses that are running in the Met Mile. But what we saw last Saturday at Churchill Downs from Midnight Bassoux in the Florida Lee, and then Tom's d'Etat in the Stephen Foster were really, really impressive races, and they don't have to leave Kentucky to run in the Breeders' Cup this year.
Yeah, that is true. And Midnight Bassoux and Tom's d'Etat were coming into their respective races as the tops in their divisions. The top older dirt female, the top older dirt male, and they did everything that was expected of them. They won the way division leaders should win, both extremely impressively. There was debate afterwards about who who ran the best race. I mean, I don't particularly care about that debate. The two races ran very differently, but the result was the same. They did more than enough to stamp themselves as the two best older dirt horses in the country.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I was silly enough to say perhaps Midnight Basou is vulnerable in that spot. And of course, I was dead wrong because she was anything but vulnerable. She just flexed her muscles, and it appears she's better now at 5 than she was at 4, and she was better at 4 than she was at 3, and so on. And Midnight Basou, that train keeps rolling. I think the interesting question now is, where does she head for November? There's races to be run in between, of course, but Midnight Basou sure looks like a female that could certainly enter the Breeders' Cup Classic and be one of the top choices in there. So it'll be interesting to see. Of course, the last 2 years she was 3rd and then 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Do they take a 3rd shot at the Distaff, or do they say, forget the Distaff, we're going Classic with her? That's an interesting story as it unfolds over the next several months. Tom's d'Etat, this is a horse I've liked for, it seems like a long time, years now, and he's just finally putting it all together with health and with regular racing for trainer Al Stahl. And it was a pleasure. He did more than you could have really hoped for in Matt Clark. Missed the track record by, I guess, 2/100ths of a second. He did it easily. He showed good speed with new rider Miguel Mena on him. It was just impressive all the way around, and he easily beat a good field that included By My Standards. So, I said before I thought he was my Breeders' Cup Classic horse. I'm not going to get off at Tom's d'Etat after that performance, Matt.
No, I'm not either. And all of that, and absolutely keeping in mind that Tom's d'Etat is doing this as a 7-year-old, and that's a rare thing in thoroughbred racing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom's d'Etat is a 7-year-old and not a gelding. He's a horse, and Midnight Basou is a top-quality horse who's back for a 5-year-old season. So not only do we applaud the connections of these horses for bringing them back and doing what they do best, but also it just goes to show you what mature horses that are healthy and happy can do when they get older than our classic races of 3 years old in America. I guess that's my parting shot for today, if you will, Matt. How about you?
My parting shot is going to be to wish you good luck, wish us good luck at Ellis Park tomorrow when our horse Pain Is My Gain makes his 2020 debut in a maiden special weight at Ellis.
Yeah, hey, that's fun. I want to wish Pain Is My Gain good luck as well, but I also want to wish all our viewers out there a very happy and safe holiday. Happy July 4th to everyone. Happy July 4th to our producer, a great producer, Brett Workman out there. And folks, thanks for watching every week. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation, please, Matt wants you to do that now. I won't even ask. This time it's Matt asking. Go ahead and subscribe now to our YouTube channel. And I also want to thank our sponsor, the best contest site out there. That's Derby Wars. Folks, next week we will be talking about a huge weekend of racing at Keeneland. So join us again next week. Until then, have a great one.